Dwarfed by the endless sweep of grass and sky, the frontier family found little protection or relief from the seasonal adversities. Out on the empty plains, there were few trees to shade them from the sun, no boulders to shield them from the blinding snow or ice, no caves to shelter them from the rains and biting winds. Resourcefulness and ingenuity were the only weapons against the indifferent elements. During such times, the sharing of common hardships and hopes created a strong sense of cooperation and community. The settlers offered each other solace, companionship, and a helping hand. Yet ultimately, their determination in the face of hardship emanated from their own persevering faith in God. From the outset, the settlers' strong religious beliefs offered a spiritual respite from the daily hardship of wilderness living. How is it pioneers persevered in their cheerfulness? There seems to be only one source, and that was their simple faith in God. The statements just heard are quoted from the book Pioneer Women, giving a sense of how the country impressed itself upon the settlers. The urge to establish a church came from an array of motives. Certainly the pioneers needed a place, secured against the harshness of nature, where they could satisfy their spiritual needs. The building of churches was a matter of protecting the identity of a person from the powerful corroding effects of frontier life, where sustaining a mere existence often seemed like all, if not more, than a person could do. Indeed, churches were a crucial part in the development of communities where they provided some semblance of civilization and helped to secure the values and the order of a life that many people had left behind in the East. According to Church News, in about 1867, the Reverend Mr. Johnson held service in Lee Summit, sometimes in the ballroom of an old hotel, in the little stuffy halls upstairs with horribly low ceilings. The church had a very small membership and was glad to have a missionary service once a month at night on a weekday. We were also indebted later to our Methodist, Baptist, and Presbyterian neighbors for a place to worship. The obvious inconvenience of this arrangement spurred the ambition of a faithful few to attempt the building of a church of our very own. Encouraged by the good words and blessing of our dear Bishop Robertson, who donated the first $25 for a building fund, by unremitting diligence, audacious begging, and the gifts of our fellow townspeople of all denominations, and not forgetting the towns in and out of the state from the Atlantic to the Pacific, we obtained enough money in 7 long years to build a little church.
Yes, Elizabeth, and with our men so busy in the fields, it will be up to us to supervise the building of our church.
Pass the basket this way, Belle. With lumber so sparse, we must ask the railroad people to give us their boxcar boards. With the profit from our rag harvest and Bishop Robertson's $25 donation and Father Dunn's inspiration and the help of all of our townspeople, we have a very good beginning.
St. Paul's was a result of many resources being guided together. This statement is strongly reinforced as one reviews the contributions and their sources that made constructing the building possible. It was fortuitous for St. Paul's that the Southern Pacific Track ran through Lee Summit. It was also fortunate that Mr. William B. Howard had decided to establish a town along the Southern Pacific Railroad. In 1865, Mr. Howard set aside 70 acres, adding 80 more later, for the town of Strother, now known as Lee Summit. He gave, as an enticement to the railroad, several parcels of land along the tracks for a station and proceeded to divide the remaining land into lots. Later, when the actual church building was raised, the railroad would once again have a part in making the church possible, for the inside ceiling of the building would be salvaged boxcar lumber. The importance of Mr. Howard's contribution is shared now with us by his grandson and wife.
Here's Howard, grandson of William B. Howard, and this is my wife, Bessie Howard.
You know, Belle, the other day I was just thinking how nice it is to be kin to a descendant of William B. Howard. What a wonderful heritage you have, and how happy I am to be married into the Howard family. Is ready to have an anniversary, 100th anniversary, and he gave the lots where the church now stands. This is the old book, you know, that Aunt Nell Howard gave us, that shows the transactions that Grandfather Howard had, and in it, it shows where he gave these lots, donated the lots to the Episcopal Church in Lee Summit.
Mr. Howard became a direct benefactor of St. Paul's when on July 16, 1884, he deeded Lot 1, Block 22, to 3 ladies of the Episcopal Mission. The architectural plans for the building were donated by the Reverend Frederick B. Sheets, rector of Grace Church, Kirkwood, Missouri. He was a railroad surveyor who was called into the priesthood. Mr. Sheets donated plans for Episcopal churches across Missouri, in Butler, St. James, and Monroe City, as well as Lee Summit. Mr. Sheets designed his structures with the basic idea of simplicity, allowing functional and affordable means for small congregations. The likeness of the rectangular building with a bell tower to the front or the side is seen in all of his completed churches. The spiritual leadership for the building came from the Reverend J.W. Dunn, then rector of Trinity Church, Independence. Recorded in Father Dunn's own handwriting in the parish register of Trinity Episcopal Church, in February 1880, he took charge of the missionary field, including Independence, Lee Summit, and Pleasant Hill. In June of 1888, Father Dunn would leave Independence and devote his full energies to Lee Summit and Pleasant Hill. Father Dunn's zeal for the missionary work of the church gave support to the vigorous energies of the women who became the actual source of both funds and direction. The 3 women to whom Mr. Howard entrusted the land were Mrs. Elizabeth M. Whiting, Mrs. Belle M. Torres, and Mrs. Bessie M. Gattrell. To continue the quote from the Church News, they have let the contract for the erection of a frame church in Lee Summit, 40 by 24 feet, and a vestibule 8 by 10 feet, 12-foot sides, and 28 feet to the apex of the roof, with a belfry over the vestibule. It is to be sealed inside and have stained glass windows. The cost of the building is to be $1,060. The business of collecting the money, making the contract, and superintending the construction is in the hands of some very energetic and capable ladies. The spirit and resolution shown in building this church is remarkable. In nearly every enterprise, the Christian women take the lead. Later, Church News, January 15, 1885, reported the role of the women in more detail. 4 years ago, 5 ladies began by forming a sewing society, and each gave 5 cents. This was the starting point of the church fund. Since then, it has steadily increased. The ladies held festivals. When they could, they took in sewing, and when there was none to be had, they sewed carpet rags and sold them. Some called it the Carpet Rag Church. It seemed impossible that they should build, and yet now they have the handsomest church in town. and have great pride and comfort in it. By early autumn of 1884, according to Church News, the building was finished. And Father Dunn was able to welcome Bishop Robertson into the new building, where the bishop offered services there for the first time. The church had only been finished a month or two before the bishop's visit, nor were there any pews in it yet. There is still a debt of $200 on it, which, however, will soon be paid over by the energy and self-sacrifice of those who have already done so much. It was not until 5 years later that Bishop Tuttle consecrated the building on September 8, 1889, again referring to a Church News report which states, "The property was cleared of debt and ready to be consecrated 3 years ago, but the death of Bishop Robertson prevented until now the consecration. We were happy by having 2 whole days given us by Bishop Tuttle, who wished to have the consecration services on the Lord's Day. In the face of a threatening rain, the house was filled by an attentive and interested congregation, 36 accepting the privilege of receiving the communion from the hands of the bishop. We have now a regular service and minister, the Reverend J.W. Dunn, a church of our own, and a large increase of communicants, making us feel very much encouraged and thankful for our prosperity." For the next decade, there was still no sitting with folded hands.